I keep getting people asking me to talk a little bit more in depth about some of the things I talk about in my going home video, where we touch on vaccines and titer tests and parasite controls. So I thought I'd do another video. Excuse the fact I'm in my bedroom. It's a really busy day today. There's loads going on downstairs. So I just thought I'm going to come upstairs where I've got some peace so I can talk without kids or dogs getting my attention. So let's talk first of all about what I suggest for vaccines and why I suggest it. So years ago, when we first started getting our dogs, I did everything by the book of the vet. Anything they told me to do, I did it. They said, get a vaccine at 8 weeks, you get a vaccine at 8 weeks. Let's say I was late getting my second vaccine. They were 10.5 weeks when I went back, and they'd say, oh no, you've missed now. You're going to have to do a restart. So then I'd do a restart. So at 10.5 weeks, I'd get my first vaccine again. And then I go back 2 weeks later and get my second vaccine. And then a year later, they'd say to me, actually, we've changed now. Now we do something different. We don't do Lepto 2 anymore. We do Lepto 4. So we're going to give you Lepto 4 this year. And I don't even question it. And I go, okay, we'll have Lepto 4 then. And they say, but we want to do a restart because you're getting a Lepto 4. So we're going to do 2 vaccines again. So we do 2 vaccines again. Then with one of the dogs, let's say 2-3 years down the line, you go for a booster and they're 14 months past their last vaccine. And they'll say to me again, oh, it's over a year. You're going to have to do a restart. You're going to have to get 2 vaccinations again. So we'd get 2 vaccinations again. So the dog's now it could have potentially had 10 vaccines by this point, and it's 3 years old. So it's had lots and lots of vaccinations. And you just do it because they tell you to do it. Now, I didn't start looking into vaccinations until a few things came up personally for us, where I started questioning, well, this coincides with this and that coincides with that. And then obviously more and more things became available online and on the internet. We can research things and we can actually see how many times these things have happened to other people. And you see, well, there is a pattern here. And then you get scientists coming forward, people that saying, actually, you don't need to do it like this. You do it like this. The people we were getting our information from originally are the people that are financially benefiting from us giving lots and lots of crap to our dogs. Yes, we do need some vaccinations. I'm not anti-vaccine, but we don't need as much as we're putting in them for the same good result, because it gives a bad result as well. There is always downsides to anything that we do. So we need to do everything to the minimum to get the maximum benefit. So some of our personal things that we had in 2013, we had a Pomeranian litter that I took for their first vaccination, 8 weeks old, and they got the Lepto 4 as well. They all went in, they had their vet check. There was 5 of them. They all vet checked perfect. Vet signed them off. Everything was perfect. Pleased with them all. Vaccinated them. I went home. Within a couple of hours, some of them seemed really not great. A bit sicky. I rang the vets. They said, oh, it's fine. Sometimes it can be like that after vaccination. They're just going to have some quiet time. They might miss a meal. That's fine. Another hour or so go on, and I realised they're really quite poorly. So I rushed them all back into the vets, and within 12 hours of the vaccination, all but one are dead. They all died. We managed to save one of them. So I said, this has got to be to do with the vaccine. You've just said they were all perfect. So the vet agrees, under the guidance of the vaccine company, that they will pay for and they will do a post-mortem on the puppies to see what they've died of. It takes weeks and weeks. They do the post-mortem, they send the puppies away, so I never have the body of the puppies back. And then after weeks, they get back to me and say there is no cause of death. There was no reason for the death. They all just died. Well, of course they're going to say that. They're never going to say, you're right, we killed them with the vaccination. So that was the first time I went, there's something going on. So after that, I said, I'm not using Lepto 4 anymore. I'm only going to use Lepto 2. So I carried on with what I was normally doing, with the rigmarole of 12-month boosters, pups getting a vaccine at 8 weeks old, with the Lepto 2. Then we had a couple of nasty reactions on Lepto 2 in Cavapoo puppies, and we had a death. And that's when I really started to look into it even deeper. And then I was more and more I was reading, it was coinciding with things that happened with our dogs, with autoimmune disorders, chronic ear infections. I would go back and look at the calendar. Well, when were they vaccinated and when did this start? And things kept happening within days, weeks of a rebooster. Then some of my older, not elderly, older dogs, like a 9-year-old dying 2 weeks after their 10th booster of liver failure. They were fine. So that's when I started going online and really, really reading it. And I just felt so angry. So what I then discovered, and it's very easy to find for all of you to find, and I give my customers the vaccine insert. It states on the Nobivac insert for the vaccination company, the only reason they need 2 vaccines when you get vaccinated at 8 weeks old is because the younger vaccine that you get is a temporary vaccination. It only works short term and it disappears because mother's immunity, which is still in the dogs, which is there to protect them, kills anything foreign coming in, and the vaccination is foreign. So mother's immunity kills off the vaccination. So you have to go back for a second one at 10 weeks. Now, majority of dogs, I'm not entirely sure on the percentage. I'd have to go back and check. I don't have it in front of me. It's about 90% of dogs have got rid of all of mother's immunity by 10 weeks old. So 90% of dogs having a second vaccine or even just their first vaccine at 10 weeks old are going to be covered. That's them covered. They don't need anything else. But then you've got your 10% that still have mother's immunity. So those pups that get a vaccination at 8 weeks old and then they get 10 weeks old and nothing else, that's it, 10% of them will still catch parvo, distemper, all the rest because they had it too young. Now, it's something like 98% have got mother's immunity out of the way by 12 weeks and 100% by 16 weeks. So somewhere between the 12 and the 16-week mark is where we say, if you're going to get your vaccination, that's when you go. And then you only need 1. And it states that in the insert, you only need 1 after a certain date. So don't let your vet bully you into anything else. The only reason you would need a second one is if you've chosen to go down the route of having lepto. Now, all the core vaccines core diseases that you're vaccinated for, they are viruses. Lepto is a bacteria. So the vaccination for a bacteria is very short acting. And at the moment, vets are giving it every 12 months. But to be honest, it doesn't last 12 months. So there's a good chunk of that 12-month period where you're not covered for lepto anyway, because it's already run out. So that's all crap in my eyes. Also, lepto is zoonotic, which means we can get it, your cats can get it, cows get it, everybody can get it, but there's only vaccinations for dogs. We're not dying of it. Your cats aren't dying of it. Your cats are, eating mice, rats, catching them, and they're supposedly one of the biggest spreaders because the rats are in the water. But we don't have an epidemic of all our cats dying of it. The reason why they scaremonger with the dogs is because financially they can, because they've found some way to vaccinate for it, for dogs. Now, the reason we don't vaccinate humans for lepto, and lepto is the same as Wheeler's disease, is because they haven't found an effective, safe vaccine, because humans would sue the arse off everybody. But dogs don't. We just go along with it. And the vets or whoever else, pharmaceutical companies, will just say, it's just one of them things. It's worth the risk. It's not worth the risk. The chance of them dying of lepto is very, very low. And it's very low acting. So Lepto 2 covers 2 of a possible 200 strains. Lepto 4 covers 4 of a possible 200 strains. You still have many, many chances to catch the other signs of lepto. And when you do your research with lepto, if you have a dog with a good immune system, with a healthy lifestyle, chances are they'll get lepto at some point and you won't even know it. They will just be a bit off for the day, then they're back to normal again. It's the same as like our coronavirus we've got at the moment. Joe Bloggs down the road catches it and dies. Somebody else catches it up the road and tests positive with no symptoms. It's to do with your immune system. It's all exactly the same. Anyway, so back to all the vaccine and the schedule and everything. So we recommend you not to have your lepto unless you really feel you should. That's your preference. If you don't, all you need is your 1 vaccination. Then at the earliest date, which is 20 weeks old, but it doesn't have to be at 20 weeks old, and the latest date being about 15 months old, you can go and have what's called a titer test, where they draw up blood from the dog and they test the dog for the immunity levels for the core vaccines to check that their immune system has responded appropriately and that they are immune to these things. Now, this is where some of the numbers fail when they're being chatted about with your vets when you get your titer test results. So the results come back from a 0 to a 6. 0 meaning you have no immunity whatsoever. 6 meaning you have a high immunity. And the reason you get a 6 is because you've just been vaccinated or you've just come into contact with, say, parvo. So when you come into contact with parvo, your body will go, oh, I've seen this before. I've been vaccinated for this. So it suddenly makes loads of the immune response cells to attack it so you don't get unwell. So your titer levels will spike right up to the top. So they'll be sitting at a 6. But when you don't come into contact with anything, it slowly wanes down and it'll sit around a 1 or a 2 because it's not in use. If our immune systems were on a 6 and on high alert all the time for everything we've ever come into contact with, we would be a mess. We'd be ill. We'd be really ill. And that's what's called an autoimmune disorder, when your immune system works overdrive and makes you sick. You know, it gives you allergies and all these other things because it's constantly thinking it's under attack. That's not what a normal immune system does. So your titer levels are meant to come down. So if you've got anything, even if it's coming back at a 1, your dog is immune. I don't care what the vet says. Some of them will say, oh, I want it to be a 3, otherwise you have to have a booster. No, a 1 means you've got something. If it's a 0, then you can discuss and think about it. Do I want to booster if they've come back at a 0, or is it so low because I've come up with nothing? Or do I want to, you know, wait, retry it in 6 months' time, see if the levels have gone up at all? Or do you want to give homeopathic no-sodes so you're giving it a bit of a kick? That's all down to you. You've got to do your own research and decide. Then the lepto side of things, if you are going to vaccinate for lepto, you need to be having a booster at least once every 12 months. It does have a low acting rate with a high reaction rate, but that's for you to decide. You know, nobody can tell you what risks you can and can't take and how you want to do things. Then going forward, once you've had your first titer test result come back and your dog's fine or your levels are good, the vet's happy, some vets will then turn around and say, yeah, but that's today. Tomorrow, they might have none. That's rubbish. That's absolute rubbish. I've explained to you how the immune system works, how titer levels work. And we have T cells as well, which is our memory cells, and they're the ones that sit down at 0 or 1, which are quite hard to measure, but unless we're having a spike. So we do have them too. So what's recommended by VacuCheck and a lot of the titer test companies, and what I'm going to recommend to you and what we personally do, is every 3 years you go back and you retiter and have a look what your levels are doing. If you're nervous, you can do it, you know, every year, but you don't have to. Do it every 3 years, and that keeps your insurance company happy. They have agreed, insurance companies, pet insurance companies have agreed that you are immunized to the level that they're happy with if you prove immunization of a titer test every 3 years. Because at the moment, the core vaccines only have to be boosted every 3 years, not the yearly one like they shout you up for. That's rubbish. Yearly, if you've got lepto, you've got to go back for that. But when you get in there, the vet doesn't just put lepto in, they put everything in. And it is causing massive issues in our dogs, from behavioural issues to mass reactions, to autoimmune disorders, to cancer, to death. Yes, some dogs live to 12 years old and they'll say, oh, my dog was old, it was healthy, it was fine. Was it really? Was it really? Or did it have lumps and bumps? Did it ever get issues with its liver, with its kidneys? Did it have skin disorders? Did it get chronic ear disorders? Would it have got all of them had you not filled it full of crap? So that's what I think about to do the vaccine side of things. So I'm not saying I'm anti-vaccine. I'm just saying I'm anti-unnecessary amounts of vaccine, because I know that shortens your dog's life. It makes their life less pleasurable if they've got issues, if they've got sore ears all the time. And I want to be the person to tell you the things that I wasn't told when I started my journey, because I would have saved a lot of my dogs a lot of heartache, a lot of health issues, and some of them would have lived longer. And that's on me for not knowing, but then we've all got to start somewhere. So that's that side of things. Then talking about parasite control. No parasite control, whether it be fleas, ticks, worms, whatever, nothing prevents, they only kill. So if your pet doesn't have any of those things, when you put that stuff into their body, you're not doing anything other than poisoning them. So you should use natural repellents and only treat if needs be. But that's for another day, another video talking about the best ways to do that. Today, I really just wanted to focus heavily on vaccinations. And as well, the younger the pup when you vaccinate them, the more likely they are to react. Not just the fact that the vaccine doesn't work as well. They're more likely to have a reaction because they have a more immature immune system. So that's another reason to wait till a little bit older. I hope that helps.